Hello, everybody. Yukiro is back with another Storytime Saturday. We are on chapter 11, and we have met Vaughn, one of my favourite characters. Although I am biased, because obviously it's my book, so of course all the characters are going to be my favourite characters. But Vaughn has a very special place in my heart. He originally wasn't going to exist in this story, but he does now. And I'm glad, because he's a very interesting character to me. I'm not very good when writing political intrigue, shall we say. So this book was a very interesting one to write, because it's more about that than actual adventure. And then obviously the other books go into the more adventure and stuff. But I wanted to focus mainly on like royalty and the king in this book. There is obviously still some adventure to be had, but it is more political intrigue. Anyway, so yeah, Vaughn was my kind of character to keep the king grounded. Originally I was going to make it a woman, but then I realised we already had Lynette for that. So yeah, Vaughn was born. So to speak. Anyway, so let's continue with the chapter, shall we? Closing the door leading to the bathroom behind himself, Vaughn gave a rather irritable sigh. He looked over to Lynette and Arius, who waited in the lavish bedroom. It was only now he paid attention to the young man. He gave Arius a critical look. It was enough to cause Arius to fidget uncomfortably. So, Vaughn began, his eyes constantly fixed on Arius. Why are you here without your guards and no silver? If I recall, you were the worst magic user I have ever had the displeasure of yelling at. Arius blushed deeply, his restlessness only getting worse now that all attention was upon him. Bandits mistook me for a son of a noble, killed the guards, then sold the silver bracelet, he explained. He hoped Vaughn wouldn't get angry at him than he already seemed to be. And why were you outside the guild to begin with? I'm surprised you were given permission from the guild master, seeing as how you always mess up your spells, Vaughn said with a critical tone. Blushing a little, Arius shifted from one foot to the other. He then said, I had permission to see my parents, now that I can control my magic better. I was on my way back to the guild when the bandits attacked us. Vaughn nodded his head, seemingly pleased with the answer. Lucky for you that our king is an idiot, man, he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. So, you and the king seem to be on friendly terms with one another, Lynette spoke up. When Vaughn gave her a pointed look, she returned his look with one of her own. Don't deny it. It is obvious you care about him a great deal, despite you calling him an idiot. Not that I do not agree with you, he is a bit careless. What kind of ruler goes out and puts himself in danger like that? With a frustrated sigh, Vaughn sat down on the edge of the bed, in the bedroom they had borrowed. He has his reasons, he said, looking over to the bathroom. And I have known him since we were children. It is only natural that I worry about him. Despite the fact that you said the king should not show any favoritism, Lynette questioned, her brow raising in curious fashion. Vaughn's lips thinned somewhat. He shifted his gaze back to Lynette and Arius. I'm his right-hand man, though do not think I fuss over him in the company of nobles. You and the boy are not nobles, though you are correct. I shouldn't have made a fuss over him in public. Vaughn sighed heavily, his fingers pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration again. However, he had been gone for days, and the only word I had to tell me that he was alive was from Roy, who had said he'd been taken by bandits. Arius gave a sheepish little smile as he said, So you were worried about him? So much so that you forgot yourself? Vaughn gave the youth a critical glare for a short moment before he grumbled his agreement. Yes, I was worried. The kingdom needs him. He cannot continue to be so reckless with his life. Looks to be more than that to me, but what do I know? I'm not even human. Lynette commented, placing her chin into her hand as she leaned forward in the chair she was sitting at, her elbow resting upon the table. What do you mean that he... Arius began, blushing deeply as he trailed off. Lynette gave a thoughtful, trilling sound before saying, Consider them friends? Well, Fenrir and he both said they have known each other since childhood. My people, the Enarin, have very tight bonds with our family and friends. I am unsure how you humans are in such cases, and I know even less when it comes to your royalty and nobles. That is not what Arius began, but he was quickly cut off when Fawn glared at him. He hunched his shoulders and bubbled, Never mind. Nick gave the youth a quizzical look, for the three of them heard the bathroom door opening. With a towel wrapped around his head to dry his hair, Fenrir returned from the bath from bathing. He was dressed in fine clothes of dyed black undercloth, leathers, simple protection, and purple robes. She had to admit, now that he had cleaned up, and now that he wore such lavish clothes, Fenrir looked quite handsome. For a human. What are you talking about? He asked, his blue eyes scanning the three with an intent curiosity. He rubbed the towel over his head with an intent determination to dry his blonde hair. Nothing, Fawn uttered as he opened the satchel next to him. He pulled out a golden crown with amethyst stones etched into the metal. He held it out to Fenrir, who glanced aside for a moment, as if he were hesitating. Only after Vaughan narrowed his eyes at the man did Fenrir finally take it, and exchanged it for the towel. However, his hair was a complete mess, and this caused Vaughan to glare at him further. What? Fenrir said, grinning. I swear to the gods, if you were not my king, Vaughan cursed at him. He almost seemed like the man was about to throttle Fenrir. Chuckling, Fenrir removed the crown and proceeded to brush his hair at the bedside mirror before finally returning the crown to his head. I was saying that you and Vaughan seem very close, but Mr. Glaralot does not seem willing to talk, Lynette said, her tone almost bored. Laughing, Fenrir glanced between Fenrir and Lynette, and then nodded. I'm not surprised. I was a donkey's backside back then. Excuse me? Lynette said, tilting her head. I'm not familiar with such an expression. He was an asshole, Vaughan explained with a deep sigh. Really, Your Majesty, you do not need to tell them anything. Fenrir moved over to the other man, hanging a loose arm around Vaughan's shoulder. He grinned, then said, This is a tale of how we became so close. Who wouldn't want to hear that? Vaughan gave another rather irritable grunt. If you trust these two that much, then I cannot stop you, he uttered. Well, I trust them more than I do my nobles. I seriously expect to find a knife in my back one of these days, Fenrir mumbled. His usual childlike spirit was lost. Vaughan's lips thinned. He rolled his eyes, then said, They won't get the chance. I'm not your knight captain for nothing. Go ahead. I can tell you were eager to tell our story of hate turned to whatever in the underworld you want to call our relationship. At Vaughan's words, Fenrir's face once more lit up like a child with a new puppy. He nodded, then casually sat down on the edge of the bed next to Vaughan. I shall have to tell the whole story then, he said, making himself comfortable. And that, my dear followers, is the end of that chapter. So the next chapter is in first person, because it's being told from Fenrir's point of view. It's the only time this happens in this book. I don't tend to swap perspectives very often, unless it's sort of like a backstory that a character is telling. And then, of course, it's in their voice, rather than third person. Kind of wanted it to be as if you're there listening to Fenrir's story. So yeah, that's how I hope it comes across. But we'll have to wait and see how these two became as closely friendly as they are. Especially considering that you're not supposed to attack your king. in front of a lot of witnesses. So yeah, hopefully you like this chapter, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.